Hello guys, welcome to Phoenix What If. So in this video, we will see what if Overpowered Naruto was raised by the Otsutsuki and invaded the Shinobi world. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. A Prophecy of Silence. The concept of a horizon did not exist here. There was no sun to cast shadows, no ground that met a sky. There was only a gentle, unending curve of ivory. A sphere of existence so vast and sterile it felt less like a place and more like a thought-given form. The air, thin and cold, carried no scent, no dust, only the faint, thrumming hum of raw power held in perfect equilibrium. Upon a floor that resembled polished bone, two figures moved. Theirs was not a fight, but a dance of such lethal precision that it transcended violence into art. The woman, Lyra, was grace given a predatory edge. Her long, white hair, bound in an intricate braid, whipped through the still air as she lunged. From her open palm, a spear of condensed starlight erupted, a weapon that could pierce a mountain as if it were parchment. It screamed across the short distance between them, aimed not to wound, but to annihilate. Her target did not move. Naruto stood as the calm at the center of her storm. His own hair, the color of sun-bleached wheat, was a stark anomaly in this colorless world. His eyes, a soft, placid blue, held the ancient, swirling pattern of the Rinnegan. He wore simple white robes, and his posture was one of relaxed attention. As Lyra's spear of light neared his heart, he did not raise a hand to block it, nor did he sidestep. Instead, the space before him bent. The spear, a projectile of pure, destructive energy, suddenly found its path warped. It curved impossibly around Naruto's body, as if he were a star and his gravity a shield. The attack harmlessly dissipated into the white nothingness behind him, its silent fury spent against an immovable law of physics that he had just written into being. Lyra did not falter. She was already in motion, her pale feet barely touching the ground as she flowed into her next attack. She moved through the wake of her own failed assault, her hands forming a new sign. The very fabric of the dimension seemed to thin around her fist, coalescing into a blade of pure spatial distortion. "Your movements are perfect, Lyra." Naruto's voice was calm, resonant, echoing slightly in the vast emptiness. "Your intent is flawless." He raised a single finger. The air around Lyra's wrist solidified. Her charge, which carried enough momentum to shatter a continent, stopped dead. She was frozen mid-stride, her expression one of focused frustration, her distortion blade shimmering an inch from Naruto's throat. "But you still mistake action for effect," he finished, his blue eyes meeting her own pale, lavender ones. He gently pushed her frozen arm aside, and the invisible shackle holding her vanished. She took a step back, breathing smoothly. There was no shame in her defeat, only analysis. "The goal is to strike you, Naruto. Action is the only path to that effect. Is it?" he asked, a hint of a smile touching his lips. "Or is the goal to create a condition where my defeat is inevitable? With or without a final blow?" A third voice, ancient and heavy as a dying star, filled the space. "He is right, child." Both Naruto and Lyra turned, bowing their heads in deference. Seated upon a floating throne of black, crystalline material that seemed to drink the non-light from the air was a Shiki Otsutsuki. He was ancient, his form wizened but radiating a power that made the dimension itself feel small. One of his eyes was a simple Byakugan, the other a complex, spoked wheel of gold and black. "Your spar is a dance," a Shiki continued, his voice a dry rasp. "But a dance with purpose. To impose one's will upon the other. The truest victory is not in the strike that lands, but in creating a reality where your opponent has no other option but to yield. To make them understand the futility of their struggle before it even begins." He gestured with a long, gnarled finger, and a shimmering portal opened beside his throne. It showed not another sterile white room, but a world teeming with chaotic, vibrant color. Green forests, blue oceans, and angry red splotches of energy that swirled like infected wounds. "Behold," a Shiki said, "the world of your birth, Naruto. Designation 487. It is beautiful, is it not? A masterpiece of uncontrolled, chaotic creation." Naruto stared into the portal. He felt no connection to the swirling green and blue, no nostalgia for a place he had never known. He saw it as a physician would see a patient, a body riddled with fever. The red splotches, concentrations of what the natives called chakra, flared and died, wars and skirmishes seen from a cosmic distance. It's a sickness, Lyra stated, her voice devoid of emotion as she looked at the image. The life there grows, festers, and consumes itself. They create power only turn it upon one another in an endless, meaningless cycle. It is a flaw in the grand design. Precisely, Ashiki affirmed. The main branch would see this vibrant chaos and seek only to harvest it. To plant a god tree and devour the entire planet, converting its life into a single chakra fruit. A crude, short-sighted solution. They are butchers, hacking away a tumor along with the patient. He rose from his throne, his form seeming to elongate as he floated towards them. The pressure of his presence intensified. We are different. We are surgeons. We do not seek to destroy the life, but to cure it of its most persistent disease, its own self-destructive will. The shinobi of that world, with their ninjutsu and their hatred, are the primary vectors of this illness. They perpetuate the cycle. They teach their children to fight, to die for patches of dirt and ideals that shift like sand. He placed a hand on Naryu's shoulder. It was cold, but the power that flowed from it was immense. You, Naryu, are the scalpel. You will descend upon them not as a god of destruction, but as a god of order. You will remove their ability to harm one another. You will excise their free will, for it is the source of their agony. You will give them a gift they are incapable of giving themselves, a world of perfect, silent peace. Naryu looked from the swirling planet back to his mentor. His expression was resolute. The preparations are complete. My guard is ready. And mine, Lyra added, stepping to his side. Their purpose was one. They were born and raised for this single, glorious task. Good, Ashiki said. A flicker of something, concern, perhaps, crossed his ancient features. But be swift. Our schism with the main branch has not gone unnoticed. I have detected faint traces, a resonance across dimensions. An inquiry. They may send an arbiter to pass judgment on our heresy. We must have the planet pacified and brought into our order before they can reclaim it for their harvest. Naryu nodded, understanding the urgency. Theirs was a race against a far greater, hungrier power. They will not interfere with our work. This world's suffering ends today. Ashiki smiled, a thin, dry cracking of his lips. So be it. Go, my children. Bring silence to their noisy world. The air in the land of iron was sharp with the cold of high altitude and the metallic tang of unsheathed steel. Snow fell in thick, silent flakes, blanketing the gray, angular rooftops of the samurai citadel. Inside the main hall, the tension was a palpable force, far more suffocating than the mountain chill. 5 thrones were arranged in a semicircle. 4 were occupied. For the third time, I will not commit my forces to patrol your borders simply because a handful of your rogue ninja have gone missing, said Onoki, the third Tsuchikage. He sat perched on his throne like a stubborn gargoyle, his ancient frame belying the immense power he held. The stone has its own concerns. Concerns. The fourth Raikage, slammed a massive, gauntleted fist onto the arm of his throne, cracking the wood. His muscular frame was coiled like a thundercloud about to burst. Your concerns include harboring shinobi who have abandoned their oaths. We call them traitors. You call them consultants. A diplomatic solution is still possible, offered Mei Terumi, the fifth Mizukage. Her voice was a calm stream flowing over the jagged rocks of the two men's tempers. Perhaps if Konoha's delegation were present, the Hokage could mediate. The Hokage is absent, growled, his gaze sweeping over the empty fifth throne. Marked with the leaf symbol of Konoha. Again, Minato Namikaze sends his apologies but is too busy to attend a summit concerning the stability of the entire world. The arrogance of the leaf is boundless. The Hokage is a busy man, Raikage Dono, a new voice said. It was Gaara of the Sand, the fifth Kazekage. He sat completely still, his arms crossed, the gourd on his back giving him an imposing silhouette. His voice, though young, carried a weight that silenced the others. Konoha suffered greatly in the last war. Its recovery is paramount to the strength of our alliance. His presence here would not change the fact that our nations are fostering mistrust. Before it could offer a blistering retort, it happened. The air in the center of the hull did not shimmer, it tore. It was the explosive arrival of a space-time jutsu. It was a violation of reality itself. A vertical seam of absolute blackness split the very fabric of the world, accompanied by a silence so profound it w. as a physical pressure against their eardrums. The temperature in the room plummeted. The light from the braziers seemed to bend inward, drawn toward the unnatural rift. From the tear, they emerged. First came a small cadre of 6 figures in white, their faces impassive, their pale eyes taking in the room with unnerving stillness. They fanned out, their movements fluid and economical, creating a perimeter. The elite samurai guards of the Land of Iron drew their blades, the hiss of steel cutting through the sudden, oppressive quiet. Then, 2 more figures stepped through. A woman with hair like spun moonlight, and a man whose presence immediately became the room's center of gravity. He was young, perhaps not even 20. His blonde hair was a shock of color against his pale skin and white robes. But his eyes, one look at his eyes sent a tremor of primal fear through every shinobi in the room. They were blue, but they held the purple, concentric rings of the legendary Rinnegan, the eyes of the Sage of Six Paths himself. Faint, horn-like protrusions peeked from his hairline, a mark of something utterly alien. He was a paradox, a figure of serene, almost gentle calm who radiated a power so vast, so overwhelming, that it felt like standing at the edge of an ocean that was about to drown the world. The cage were on their feet in an instant, their bodyguards, Darui, Akatsuchi, Chojuro, Tamari, leaping in front of them. Weapons drawn. "Who are you?" A bellowed, his body already crackling with blue lightning. "How did you get in here?" The blond man, Neryu, did not look at him. His gaze swept over the cage, the bodyguards. The terrified samurai. His expression was not one of aggression, but of profound disappointment, like a father looking upon his brawling children. "So much noise," he said, his voice quiet yet carrying to every corner of the hall. "So much anger. Even in a room meant for peace, you prepare for war." That was all the warning they got. The Raikage moved first. He was a blur of lightning and rage. The fastest shinobi alive. His lightning release chakra mode was at maximum output as he launched himself across the room, his fist cocked for a blow that could shatter mountains. To him, the world was a frozen tableau. He was speed itself. But as he approached the blond man, the world around his target seemed to thicken, to become treacle. His incredible velocity began to bleed away. It felt like running through hardening concrete. Within feet of his target, he was moving at a crawl, his muscles screaming with the strain of pushing against an invisible, irresistible force. He looked down and saw nothing, yet he was held fast, his ultimate speed rendered utterly meaningless. Neryu hadn't even flinched. "Speed is irrelevant when the space it occupies is under my command," Neryu said simply. From above, Onoki had his hands clasped. A cube of shimmering, white light formed between his palms. Particle style. Atomic dismantling jutsu. He launched the cube, a technique of pure annihilation that reduced everything it touched to dust on a molecular level. It was an absolute, unblockable attack. Neryu finally moved. He raised a hand, his palm open and unadorned, and simply caught it. The cube of shimmering annihilation, a power that had terrified the world for decades, touched his skin and vanished. It did not explode. It did not fizzle. It was simply unmade. Its complex energies dismantled and absorbed in less than a second. Onoki's eyes went wide with sheer, unadulterated shock. His jaw hung open. Impossible. Before the shock could even register, Gaara's sand and Mei's lava surged forward in a pincer attack. A tidal wave of crushing grit and a torrent of molten rock converged on Naryu's position. Neryu did not look at either of them. A silent, invisible wave of force erupted from his body. It was not an explosion. It was a declaration. Shinra Tensai. The sand and lava were blasted backward with contemptuous ease, splattering against the far walls of the hall. The wave of force continued, striking the cage and their guards. It didn't feel like being hit. It felt like the universe had decided they should be elsewhere, violently. They were thrown back against their thrones, the wood and stone cracking under the impact. At the same time, the samurai guards who had been bravely charging forward simply dropped. They collapsed to the floor in heaps, their limbs locked. Their bodies held down by an invisible, crushing weight. They were alive, conscious, but utterly paralyzed, pinned to the floor by a gravitational field Neiryu had applied with a passing thought. The entire exchange had taken less than 5 seconds. The hall was a wreck. The strongest leaders in the shinobi world were slumped against their broken thrones, gasping for air. Their elite bodyguards were either pinned or struggling to rise. The Raikage was still frozen in his running stance, a living statue of impotent fury. And in the center of it all, Neiryu and his followers stood untouched. Their robes pristine, their expressions unchanged. Naryu's gaze fell upon the cage, one by one. There was no malice in his eyes, only a cold, unshakable certainty. He was a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis. You have been weighed, you have been measured, and you have been found wanting, he announced, his voice the only sound in the ruined hall. For centuries, your world has been locked in a spiral of death. You fight, you bleed, you die, and for what? For banners, for pride, for hatred passed down like a family heirloom. You were the architects of your own misery. He took a step forward. And every person in the room flinched. That age is over, he declared. As of this moment, the age of nations and shinobi has ended. A new era of absolute, silent peace begins now. I am your salvation. I will remove the instruments of your pain, your armies, your jutsu, your very will to fight. He turned his gaze to the empty throne of Konoha. Go back to your villages. Tell your people what you have seen. You have one choice. Surrender your autonomy to my order, and your people will know no more war, no more famine, no more suffering. Resist. His gaze hardened. The placid blue of his eyes turning to glacial ice, and we will remove you, the leaders who perpetuate this cycle, as the primary obstacle to their peace. With that, he turned. The black tear in reality reappeared behind him. Wait, Gaara choked out, pushing himself up on one arm. What is your name? The blond man paused at the edge of the portal. He looked back over his shoulder, his Rinnegan seeming to pierce Gaara's very soul. I am Neiryu Otsutsuki, he said. And I am the will of a universe that craves order. He, Lyra, and his followers stepped back into the void. The tear sealed itself with a faint, final hiss, leaving behind a shattered hall, 5 broken leaders, and a world that had just been put on notice by God. The lights of Konohagakure twinkled in the early evening. A sea of warmth and life nestled within the deep, dark forest. From the window of the Hokage's office, the view was peaceful, almost idyllic. Children's laughter could be faintly heard from the streets below as families prepared for their evening meals. Minato Namikaze, the 4th Hokage, watched it all with a tired but fond smile. He had been denied the cage summit by a mountain of paperwork. And a dispute between the Hyuga and Uchiha clans that required his personal touch. Sometimes, he felt more like a bureaucrat than the legendary Yellow Flash. He ran a hand through his spiky blonde hair, his gaze drifting to the stone faces carved on the mountain overlooking the village. His own face was up there, a permanent sentinel. A promise. A flicker of movement in the corner of his eye. An NBU operative knelt in the center of his office, head bowed. The porcelain mask of a hawk stared at the floor. Lord Hokage. The voice was strained, urgent. An emergency scroll from the land of iron. From the summit, Minato's smile vanished. He turned from the window, his posture instantly shifting from weary father figure to decisive leader. Report. The Anbu produced a scroll and held it out with a trembling hand. Minato took it. It was sealed with the emergency codes of all 5 great nations, a protocol that hadn't been used in generations. A cold knot of dread formed in his stomach. He unrolled it. His eyes scanned the frantic, hastily written script penned by one of Onoki's aides. The words blurred together into a litany of the impossible. Appeared from a tear in space. Alien features. Rinnegan. Power beyond comprehension. Raikage's speed nullified. Onoki's particle style dissipated in his palm. Cajun guards defeated without injury in seconds. Minato's grip on the scroll tightened, his knuckles turning white. He read the ultimatum, the demand for total surrender, the promise of a forced, absolute peace. Then he got to the description of the invader. Young, blonde hair, blue eyes, called himself Neiryu Otsutsuki. The scroll slipped from Minato's fingers, fluttering to the floor. The Anbu looked up, startled by the Hokage's sudden stillness. Minato stumbled back to the window, his breath catching in his chest. The peaceful village lights suddenly seemed fragile, vulnerable. He stared out at the night, but he wasn't seeing the village. He was seeing a different night, 16 years ago. A night of fire and screams, of a roaring nine-tailed demon, and the face of his newborn son, crying in his arms. A son he had sealed a monster into. A son he had lost in the chaos of that night, believed dead. A son with blonde hair and blue eyes. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic, painful rhythm. It couldn't be. It was a coincidence. A cruel, cosmic joke. But, as he stared at his own reflection in the dark glass, at the face the village had carved into a mountain, he saw the ghost of another face superimposed over his own. The face of the god-like being described in the scroll. The face of his son. The knot of dread in his stomach became a chasm of cold, terrifying certainty. The monster that had just brought the most powerful people on the planet to Iron Knees wasn't just a threat to his world. It was a threat to his soul. Chapter 2. The Echo of a Ghost. The world did not fall silent. It screamed. Panic was a contagion, spreading faster than any fire. Reports from the Land of Iron, initially dismissed as hysterical delusions, were corroborated by terrified samurai and then, chillingly, by the Raikage and Tsuchikage themselves. The news ripped Hiro the shinobi nations like a shockwave. A being calling himself Otsutsuki. Eyes that held the power of myth. An ultimatum that was not a threat of war, but of erasure. In Konohagakure, the idly peace Minato had cherished just hours before had shattered. The streets were still orderly, but the order was brittle, born of fear. Anbu moved in silent, flitting shadows across rooftops, their presence a constant, grim reminder. The air was thick with whispers, with the dread of a storm that had already announced its arrival. The Hokage's office had become a war room. The mountain of paperwork was swept aside, replaced by maps of the continent crisscrossed with tactical markings that already felt hopelessly obsolete. The air hummed with a desperate, focused energy. "They're not attacking," Jiraiya said. His usual boisterous energy compacted into a low, gravelly growl. He paced before the large window, his long white hair swaying with the agitated movement. He had just returned, ing in a swirl of smoke and toad scent not an hour before. That's what's so unsettling. His followers, these pale, calm-eyed monsters, have appeared in a dozen smaller towns in the Land of Earth and the Land of Wind. They don't kill. They don't burn. He stopped, turning to face the others. His gaze was hard. They just pacify. A group of sand shinobi engaged them near the border. The fight was over in a minute. Our men weren't killed. Their limbs were twisted and broken with casual, horrifying precision. They were disarmed, their chakra pathways sealed, and left alive. The message is clear. We can kill you whenever we wish. We are choosing not to. Kakashi Hatake leaned against a wall, his single visible eye closed as if listening to the report with more than just his ears. His posture was relaxed, but it was the stillness of a predator. It's psychological warfare. He's not trying to conquer us. He's trying to make us surrender. To break our will to fight. He has already succeeded with some, a quiet voice added. All eyes turned to the third figure in the room. Itachi Uchiha stood near the shadows of a bookshelf, almost a part of them. His face was a mask of serene neutrality, but his Sharingan was active. Its three tomo spinning slowly, absorbing every detail. The daimyo of the land of Fang has already sent a missive of surrender to Naryu's forces, Itachi continued, his voice even. He saw the report from the summit and concluded that resistance is a guarantee of economic ruin, while surrender is a promise of stability. He is the first. He will not be the last. Minato sat behind his desk. His hands steepled before him. He looked every inch the Hokage, his expression firm, his eyes clear and decisive. It was a masterful performance. Inside, his soul was a maelstrom. Every time he heard the name, Naryu, it felt like a physical blow. The description of the invader, the blonde hair, the blue eyes, the impossible power, was a specter that had not left him. My son is a monster who has come to unmake the world. Then a direct confrontation is exactly what he wants, Minato said, his voice steady, betraying none of the tempest within. He wants to demonstrate his power on a grand scale, to make an example of our armies and terrify the world into submission. So we can't give him that fight, Jiraiya slammed his fist on the desk. We can't meet him on an open field. He'll flatten us. We need a different approach. We need to be smarter. We need a trap. Kakashi's eye opened. What kind of trap works on a god, sensei? Jiraiya's eyes gleamed with a cunning fire. Even a god has appetites. This Naryu, he's a collector of strange energies. He absorbed Onoki's particle style. He's fascinated by power, so we offer him a meal he can't resist. He looked from Minato to Itachi. The chakra of the tailed beasts. We have emissaries from Kumo here, the two tails, Yugito ni. And of course, we have Kushina. Minato's composure finally cracked. A muscle in his jaw tightened. No, I will not put Kushina in that kind of danger. We don't put her in danger, Minato, Jiraiya countered, his voice softening slightly. We use her chakra, just a signature, a small, potent sample, mingled with that of the two tails. We create a beacon, an energy signature so unique, so powerful, that this Naryu will have to investigate it personally. We lure him, not his army. Itachi stepped forward, his expression intent, and the location of the trap is just as important as the bait. We need a place that can contain him, or at least hinder him. A place designed to suppress power. He paused, his gaze unreadable. There is such a place. An old Uchiha clan hideout, dating back to the Warring States period. It's nestled in a deep valley, shielded from sensory detection. More importantly, it is protected by the most powerful barrier seals our clan ever devised. The Chakra Suppression Field. It was designed to discipline Uchiha who had lost control of their Sharingan. It doesn't just block chakra. It actively leeches it from anyone within its bounds, severing their connection to their own power. A glimmer of hope, the first in days, entered the room. Kakashi pushed off the wall. If we can cut him off from his chakra, even for a moment, he becomes mortal, Minato finished, the strategic implications overriding his personal turmoil. We lure him in, activate the seals, and hit him with everything we have. It's a long shot, Jiraiya admitted. We have no idea if his power even works on the same principles as ours. But it's the only shot we have that isn't suicide. Minato stood, his decision made. The father receded, and the Hokage took full command. Itachi, you will lead the sealing team and prepare the site. Kakashi, you will command the ambush force. Jiraiya-sensei, you and I will prepare the bait and coordinate the attack. This being, this Naryu, wants to show us the futility of resistance. We will show him the price of underestimating the will of Shinobi. His eyes, so like the ones he now fought, burned with a cold, yellow fire. The citadel floated in the sky above the land of rain, a testament to a power that defied all known laws. It was a construct of the same ivory-white material as Naryu's home dimension, a stark, beautiful scar against the perpetually weeping gray sky. Below, the land that had known nothing but war and sorrow was slowly being transformed. Clean water flowed where mud had once pooled. Fields, barren for generations, were showing faint signs of green. The work of the order was quiet, efficient, and absolute. From a high balcony, Naryu watched the world through the downpour. The data flowed into him. Weather patterns, geological stresses, the emotional state of the populace below. He could feel their fear, their despair, but also a growing, hesitant flicker of hope as his followers distributed food and medicine. The sickness was deep, but the treatment was beginning to take hold. Their defiance is an interesting variable, he mused, his voice a quiet rumble. Lyra stood beside him, her arms crossed. Her pale lavender eyes, which could see the flow of chakra as clearly as a hawk sees a mouse, scanned the landscape. It is an imperfection, a flaw to be corrected. Their leaders rally them, fill their heads with foolish pride. We should descend upon this, Konoha, and remove its Hokage. The rest will crumble, and what would that teach them? Naryu countered, not turning to look at her. It would teach them that power is the only answer. That is the very lesson I am trying to make them forget. By resisting, they are showing me the depths of their illness. I must understand it completely before I can enact the final cure. As he spoke, a soft chime echoed in his mind. It was an notification from one of the many sensory constructs he had seated across the globe. He tilted his head, his focus shifting. What is it? Lyra asked, sensing his change in attention. An anomaly, Naryu said. A highly unusual concentration of energy. Two distinct, Powerful signatures, intertwined. They are chaotic, primal, like raw, untamed creation. He closed his eyes, his consciousness soaring across continents. He saw the energy signature not as a light, but as a texture in the fabric of reality. One was a searing, ghost fire blue. The other was a furious, boiling red, laced with something oddly familiar, a warmth. A feeling of fierce, unyielding protection. It was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Lyra's Byakugan widened. I feel it too. It's immense. It feels like a trap. It is a trap, Nereus said, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. They are clever. They are not challenging me to a battle they cannot win. They are presenting me with a puzzle. An invitation. He opened his eyes, the Rinnegan spinning with intellectual curiosity. They wish to show me their strength. It would be rude not to accept. You will go alone. Lyra's voice was sharp with concern. Of course, he replied, turning to face her. They have invited a god, not an army. And I am curious to see what tools mortals bring to hunt a deity. He took a step forward, and the space before him twisted open. A perfect black portal humming with silent power. He paused and looked back at her. Do not worry, Lyra. The first lesson in any cure is isolating the pathogen. He stepped through the portal, and it sealed behind him, leaving Lyra alone on the balcony, staring into the endless rain. The air in the Uchiha Valley was heavy and still, thick with the ghosts of old hatred. The stone walls of the canyon were carved with faded Uchiha fans, monuments to a clan's pride and its downfall. Hidden among the rocks and skeletal trees, hundreds of Konoha's finest shinobi held their breath, their hearts pounding in a collective, silent rhythm. Kakashi was among them, his hand resting on the hilt of his blade, his Sharingan already uncovered and scanning the clearing below. In the center of that clearing, Itachi stood alone. Around him, the ground was etched with a vast, complex array of glowing blue kanji, the master seal. Minato and Jiraiya were positioned on the canyon rim, ready to give the signal. And then, he was there. No flash, no explosion. One moment, the clearing was empty. The next, Nereus stood opposite Itachi, his white robes a stark contrast to the oppressive gloom of the valley. He took a moment to observe his surroundings, his blue eyes taking in the glowing seals on the ground, the hidden watchers he could undoubtedly sense, and the lone Uchiha standing before him. An impressive display, Nereus said, his voice calm. All this effort, all this hope, focused on one desperate, single moment. Itachi's expression did not change. We are shinobi. We live in desperate moments. Indeed. Naryu's gaze dropped to the chakra beacon Itachi held, a small, pulsating orb of mingled blue and red energy. You offered me a taste of power. I have come to see the feast. Then you accept our hospitality. Itachi said. It was the signal. From the rim, Minato's hand dropped. Now, Itachi slammed his palm onto a trigger seal at his feet. The effect was instantaneous. The glowing blue array on the ground erupted into a pillar of blinding light, forming a cage of pure energy around Nereus. The air inside the cage shimmered, and every shinobi hidden in the valley felt a sudden, sickening lurch in their gut. It was as if a cord connecting them to their own power had been violently yanked. Their chakra reserves felt distant, muted, almost inaccessible. Kakashi gritted his teeth against the feeling. It's working. He's trapped. Inside the cage of light, Nereus stood perfectly still. He raised a hand, looking at his palm as if it belonged to a stranger. He felt the pull, the leeching effect of the seals. His connection to the vast reserves of power within him, the power he had wielded since birth, was being muffled. It was a novel sensation. An annoyance. He looked at Itachi, who watched him with breathless intensity. A clever design, Nereus commented, his voice slightly strained. To sever the river from its source. You believe my power is a river, to be dammed and diverted. A flicker of hope ignited in Itachi's chest. It was working. He was affected. All power has a source, Itachi stated. You are not wrong, Nereus said, a faint smile on his lips. You are simply thinking too small. He closed his eyes. The shinobi felt at first as a subtle tremor in the ground. Then the trees began to rustle, though there was no wind. The very rocks of the canyon walls began to hum. Nereus, cut off from his internal power, simply reached for an external one. He reached out with his will and pulled. He pulled on the life force of the ancient trees. He pulled on the dormant energy of the stones. He pulled on the vast, untapped ocean of natural energy that permeated the entire world. He was no longer a river. He became the sea itself. The energy that flooded into him was a raw, green, elemental torrent. It was chaotic and wild, nothing like the refined power of the Otsutsuki, but it was limitless. The blue seals of the Uchiha's masterwork flickered, overloaded. They glowed white-hot, sizzled. And then, with a deafening crack that sounded like the world itself breaking, they shattered into a million pieces of fading light. The cage was gone. The oppressive suppression field vanished. Every shinobi felt their chakra rush back, but the feeling was not one of relief. It was one of absolute terror. Naryu opened his eyes. They were no longer just blue. They glowed with a brilliant, green-gold light, brimming with the untamed power of the planet itself. "Your trap has failed," he stated, the very air vibrating with his voice. "The lesson begins." Before anyone could react, he moved. But Itachi was ready. His Sharingan spun, and the world dissolved into a storm of black crows and crimson moonlight. Genjutsu. A world of illusion where Itachi was God. Ryu found himself standing in a field of bones under a bleeding sky, watching as the figure of Itachi dissolved and reformed, speaking of failure and despair. He experienced it not as a reality, but as a complex, layered piece of art. Fascinating, his mind analyzed. He is not attacking my senses. He is attacking my perception of reality itself, using my own chakra against me. The patterns are elegant, the emotional resonance is potent, but the underlying code is flawed. It assumes a mortal psyche. With a simple exertion of will, Naryu did not break the illusion. He disassembled it. The crows turned to dust. The red moon crumbled. The field of bones receded, and he was back in the valley, facing a stunned Itachi. "Your art is beautiful," Naryu said, with genuine appreciation. "But it cannot deceive a mind that perceives the source code of existence." He raised a hand, black rods materializing from his palm. "Now, allow me to show you true reality." He lunged forward, but just as he moved, a flash of brilliant yellow light erupted between him and Itachi. A figure appeared, blonde, blue-eyed, wearing the white Hokage coat. Minato Namikaze. In his hand, he held a unique, three-pronged kunai, which he used to parry the black rod aimed at Itachi's heart. The screech of their impact was a physical pain. Space distorted around them as Minato teleported, grabbing Itachi and vanishing in another yellow flash. Reappearing on the canyon rim 100 yards away, Naryu stopped, his eyes fixed on the spot where Minato had been. That flash, that instantaneous movement, it was not the clumsy warp of his own portals. It was something else, something resonant, an echo in the deepest, most sealed-off chambers of his being. A flicker of something that felt like home. Before the thought could fully form, another yellow flash. Minato was back, alone, standing between Naryu and the rest of his forces. It was here, in the heart of the ruined trap, that Minato got his first clear look at the enemy. He saw the alien horns, the divine eyes, the overwhelming pressure of a god. But beneath it all, he saw the face. It was Kushina's stubborn jawline. It was his own spiky blonde hair. It was the face of the baby he'd held. The face he saw in his dreams. The resemblance was so perfect, so complete, that it stole the breath from his lungs and the strength from his limbs. The legendary yellow flash, a man who moved faster than thought, froze. For a single, eternal second, the Hokage vanished. All that remained was a father, staring in heartbroken disbelief at the son he had lost and found again as an apocalyptic force. Naryu, his mind a super processor of combat data, perceived the hesitation instantly. He saw the flicker of weakness, the sudden emotional chaos that erupted in his opponent's chakra. He didn't understand its origin. It was illogical, a flaw in the man's combat programming, but he recognized it as an opportunity. Yet, he did not take it. That flicker of resonance from the yellow flash, combined with the inexplicable emotion he now saw in his opponent's eyes, created a conflict in his own perfect logic. New data, contradictory data. He lowered his hand. "The demonstration is over," Naryu announced, his voice holding a new, unreadable tone. He took a step back, the world behind him tearing open into another black portal. He gave Minato one last, analytical look. "Your defiance is more complex than I anticipated. He turned and stepped into the void, vanishing from the world. The valley was silent save for the wind. The Konoha shinobi emerged from their hiding places, their faces pale with shock and relief. Itachi appeared beside Minato, his breathing heavy. "Lord Hokage, are you all right?" Minato didn't answer. He just stared at the spot where Neryu had been, his body trembling slightly. Kakashi and Jiraiya flashed down to his side. "Minato, what is it?" Jiraiya asked, his face grim. "What did you see?" Minato finally tore his gaze away, looking at his old master with haunted eyes. "I saw his face, Sensei," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I saw his face." Meanwhile, miles above the earth in his silent, floating citadel, Neryu stood before an observation window, staring at his own reflection. Lyra stood behind him, her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of confusion and disapproval. "You had them. You had their leader," he faltered. "Why did you retreat?" she demanded. "You showed mercy. Mercy is a human failing." Neryu didn't respond. He was replaying the moment in his mind. The yellow flash, the three-pronged kunai, the sudden, crippling hesitation in the Hokage's eyes. It was an equation with too many unknown variables. He raised his own hand, half expecting to see it glow with yellow light. It did not. "The data," he said finally, his voice distant, as incomplete. The seed of confusion, planted by the sight of a technique he should not have known, was beginning to take root in the sterile soil of his soul. Chapter 3. The Valley of Gods and Men. Rain fell in sheets over the land of rain, turning the earth into a sea of mud and memory. A megacre, once a graveyard of broken dreams, now hummed with unnatural life. Naryu's floating citadel cast a perpetual shadow over the central spire, its ivory glow cutting through the gloom like a false dawn. Below, his followers moved among the people, distributing nutrient packs that banished hunger in hours. Erecting barriers that turned floodwaters into arable fields, healing the war-wounded with touches that knit flesh like fresh clay. From his command chamber high in the citadel, Neryu watched it unfold on a shimmering holographic display. Lines of data scrolled across his vision. Population metrics rising, conflict indicators flatlining, chakra aggression signatures dropping to near zero. The treatment was taking hold. Yet his focus drifted. The anomaly from the valley gnawed at him. That yellow flash, the kunai's unique seal, the man's eyes that mirrored his own in a way that defied probability. He had run simulations, genetic drift, chakra mimicry, surgical alteration. All improbable, all insufficient. Lyra entered without announcement, her boots silent on the polished floor. She carried a tablet etched with glowing runes. Surrender rates are at 23% among minor clans. The beacon trap has only strengthened their resolve in the major villages. They call you, the Pale God, now. Fear is turning to myth. Myth serves order, Neryu replied, not looking up. Fear without purpose breeds chaos. She set the tablet down, her lavender eyes narrowing. And this, she tapped a rune, projecting the frozen image from the valley. Minato's kunai mid-swing, yellow chakra blazing. You've analyzed it 64 times. What does it matter? Strike their heart. Konoha, and the myth dies. He waved the projection away. Data integrity requires completeness. Their leader employs a space-time technique unlike any recorded. It resonates. I will understand it before I excise it. A soft chime interrupted. One of his guards, pale and impassive, knelt at the chamber door. Lord Neryu, a broadcast from their alliance. They demand parley at the Valley of the End. A final stand. Lyra scoffed. A slaughter. Let me lead the vanguard. No. Neryu rose, his robes settling perfectly. They choose symbolism. Madara versus Hashirama. Gods among men. They test if I will descend to their level. His Rinnegan spun faintly. I will show them there are no levels. Only inevitability. He stepped to the balcony, space warping beneath his feet into a descending platform of rippling air. Lyra followed, her hand twitching toward her hip where a spatial blade hummed dormant. The people below looked up, some in awe, others in terror. Word had spread. The Pale God's work. Fed the hungry but chained the warriors. A few cheered, most bowed. Neryu ignored them, his gaze fixed westward, toward the valley where history's blood had run deepest. The Valley of the End thundered with preparation. Waterfalls that had carved stone faces for generations now churned with the fury of a mobilized world. The allied shinobi forces had gathered in unprecedented numbers, 10,000 strong. A sea of flak jackets and headbands from every village. Jonin and Chunin lined the rims, catapults loaded with explosive tags, sensor ninja weaving detection grids. At the heart, on the crack, Ked platform between the colossal statues of Hashirama and Madara, stood the command circle. Minato, Jiraiya, Itachi, Kakashi, Tsunade, and a dozen cage-level elites. Kushina Uzumaki paced like a caged fox, her red hair unbound and wild. Adamantine chains flickering at her fingertips. Databane, Minato, you saw his face. It's him. Our boy. We can't just. Kushina. Minato's voice was steel-wrapped in velvet. He gripped her shoulders, blue eyes locking onto hers. We fight for everyone, including him. If there's a spark of Naruto left. Jiraiya grunted from his perch on a boulder, toad oil gleaming on his skin as Sage Mode primed. Spark or not, he's a walking apocalypse. The seals barely slowed him. Natural energy. He drank the valley dry like it was sake. Itachi's Sharingan swept the horizon. He comes alone. No army. He wants to break us personally. Tsunade cracked her knuckles. Then we bury him in bodies till he cracks. A hush fell. The air thickened, pressure dropping like a storm's approach. No portal, no flash. Naryu simply was, materializing atop Hashirama's stone head, white robes billowing in the wind as if gravity deferred to him. His voice carried without amplification, clear as a bell over the roar of water. You have gathered to defy order, to cling to chaos. I offer you peace without end. Lay down your arms. Embrace silence. Minato stepped forward, voice booming via amplification seals. Your peace is a cage, Otsutsuki. We choose our chains. And today, we shatter yours. Naryu sighed, a sound of genuine weariness. So be it. He didn't charge. He raised a hand. The first wave hit like an invisible tsunami. Jonin leapt from the rims, fireballs and water dragons streaking toward him. Earth walls rose to shield archers. Lightning grids crackled. Shinra Tensai. The world repelled. Fireballs reversed mid-flight, slamming into their casters. Dragons shattered into harmless mist. Earth walls crumbled inward, crushing shinobi beneath tons of stone. Bodies flew, not punched, but willed elsewhere, crashing into cliffs or plunging into foaming rivers. Dozens fell in heartbeats, alive but broken, limbs pinned by gravitational spikes that erupted from nowhere. Screams echoed, but Naryu moved on. He descended the statue in a lazy arc, feet never touching stone. A squad of Kumo Jonin met him with a lightning Choujin barrage, their forms blurring into thunder gods. He walked through it, lightning bent around him, coiling harmlessly like serpents denied prey. One Jonin got close, lariat cocked. Naryu's finger flicked. The man's arm froze mid-swing, space compressing it to a point before expanding, snapping bone without blood. Primitive, Naryu murmured. From the Alliance center, Kakashi vanished in a puff, reappearing behind Naryu with Reikiri blazing. Kamui. The eye-warped blade struck true, or seemed to. Naryu turned, palm out. The distortion of Kamui warped around his hand, feeding into a void he opened casually. Kakashi's eye widened as his own technique turned inward, forcing him back in a spiral of feedback pain. Interesting recursion, Naryu noted, almost politely. Jiraiya Toad summoned mid-leap, Gamabunta crashing down with a massive cleaver. Sage art. Gomon. Boiling oil met Naryu's upraised palm. Steam exploded, but he stood untouched, oil parting like the sea. Gamabunta bellowed as gravitational rods pierced his hide, forcing the massive toad to dematerialize in pain. Jiraiya landed rolling, palms slamming earth for senjutsu reinforcement. Kids got Sage Mode on steroids. Naryu regarded him. Yours is a crude echo of true harmony. Potent, but unrefined. He gestured. Roots of pure natural energy lashed out, sage-enhanced tendrils wrapping Jiraiya. The Sannin broke free with a roar, frog kata punches rippling air. One connected. Barely, shattering Naryu's guard with raw force. Naryu staggered a step, surprise flickering. Impressive. You borrow the Earth's will without its consent. Jiraiya grinned ferally. Shinobi style. Take what you need. Give back double. Naryu nodded once, respect in his eyes. Then rods lanced, non-lethal but precise, severing chakra flow. Jiraiya dropped, gasping but alive. The platform cleared unnaturally. Bodies littered the rims, moaning. Half the alliance forces down without Naruto drawing breath. Minato flashed in, kunai weaving Hiraishin chains. Yellow light danced, kunai marking air like stars. He teleported in a frenzy, each mark a strike point, blade seeking throat. Naruto met him midair, black rods clashing against tri-prong. Space tore around them, Hiraishin pulls versus gravitational defiance. Minato's speed was legend, Naruto's control absolute. You fight like echoes, Naruto said between clashes, voice even. Predictable patterns. Minato gritted teeth, sweat beading. Space-time's about choice. You warp it, I own it. A final teleport barrage, 20 kunai raining. Naruto caught one, analyzed its seal mid-motion. Resonance hit again, deeper. Familiar. Minato pressed, blade nicking robe. Naruto. Fight it, you're my son. The name landed like a rod through Naruto's core. He froze, mid-counter. Blue eyes locked on Minato's. From the platform, Kushina screamed. Chains erupting, a storm of crimson steel. Get away from him. The adamantine links, forged of Uzumaki blood, lashed out. They weren't chakra constructs, they were will made manifest. One coiled Naruto's wrist, another his ankle. Contact. A flood hit, not pain, but memory. Alien, human, a night of fire, a fox's roar. Blue eyes, tiny, newborn, staring up. Warm arms, a seal's glow. Sacrifice. Kushina's face, tear-streaked. Live. Naruto. Live for us. Minato's voice, resolute. The child is key. Naruto staggered, Rinnegan wide. Emotions, raw, chaotic, surged. Love, loss, protection, parents. Lyra warped in, blade igniting. Naruto. Quote. Her distortion cleaved chains, pulling him back. Space ripped wide. She shoved him through. Minato teleported to Kushina, clutching her as forces rallied. Cheers mixed with sobs. Half their army down, but the god retreated. Kushina trembled, chains retracting. Minato. It was him. Our boy. I felt it. Minato held her tight, staring at the fading portal. He felt it too. High in the citadel, Naruto collapsed to one knee. Lyra caught him, eyes blazing. What was that? Contamination. He gasped, mind reeling. Data corrupted by feeling. Names. Faces. A past. Your past. Lyra pressed, voice edged. Impossible. He rose, shoving it down. But the crack remained. Naruto. Parents. A world not to cure, but home. Far below, in the valley's shadow, whispers spread. The pale god had bled. The pale god had faltered. The stalemate held, but the gods among men were now men with a god's doubt. Chapter 4. The Temptation of Peace. The war paused, not by treaty or truce, but by a collective, terrified intake of breath. The Battle of the Valley of the End became a ghost story whispered in barracks and bars across the continent. A god had descended, broken an army without killing it, and then faltered at the cry of a mother. The world didn't understand the why, only the what. For the first time, Naruto Otsutsuki had shown something other than absolute, indifferent power. Naruto weaponized the uncertainty. While the allied shinobi forces licked their wounds and tried to decipher the meaning of his retreat, he accelerated the Utopia project. The Land of Rain became his showcase. From the floating citadel, he and his followers deployed technologies that bordered on magic. Atmospheric purifiers scrubbed the perpetual rain from the sky, revealing a pale, watery sun for the first time in generations. Soil regenerators, driven by nature energy siphoned from deep within the earth, turned fields of mud into fertile farmland overnight. The first harvest was reaped a week later. There was no more hunger. Medical pods, crystalline chambers that bathed patients in regenerative light, were established in every town. Chronic illnesses, battle injuries, even congenital defects were erased in minutes. The average lifespan in the region tripled in a fortnight. There was no more sickness. Most insidious of all was the Concordia field, an invisible, omnipresent wave of Naruto's own chakra, broadcast from the citadel, subtly permeated the entire country. It didn't control minds, not directly. It was a gentle anesthetic for the soul. It smoothed the sharp edges of aggression. It dampened the fires of ambition. It cooled the heat of passionate conflict. Arguments became discussions. Grudges faded into mild disagreements. The impulse to raise a fist in anger simply dissolved before it could form. Crime plummeted to zero. There was no more conflict. The propaganda was brutally effective because it was true. Merchants traveling through the WLY named Land of Serenity brought back tales not of a conquered, oppressed people, but of a populace dazed with contentment. They were well fed, healthy, and safe. Their faces were placid, their voices calm. It was a paradise built on a foundation of surrender. And the world began to fracture. In the Fire Nation capital, the daimyo met with his advisors. The Cage reports that 2 more of H's border towns have petitioned for Otsutsuki protection. Their people are starving. Minato Dono speaks of freedom, of will, but my people speak of empty grain silos and the fear of another war. How long can we ask them to fight for the right to suffer? Within the stone village, the younger generation grew restless. Lord Onoki was defeated. Our strongest techniques are useless. The Leaf's Hokage seems to be waging a personal war. Are we to die for his family drama while our enemies offer our children full bellies and a peaceful future? The Shinobi alliance, forged in the crucible of shared threat, began to show cracks under the strain of a seductive peace. Inside Konoha's war room, the mood was grim. Maps were now covered not just with troop movements, but with red zones indicating regions whose loyalty was wavering. He's not fighting a war, he's running a campaign, Jiraiya growled, pacing furiously. He's winning hearts and minds by scooping out their insides and replacing them with happy compliance. It's brilliant. It's monstrous. Minato stood at the window, staring at the Hokage monument. The memory of Kushina's chains connecting, of that flood of alien yet familiar emotion, was a constant presence. He was no longer just a leader fighting a war, he was a father trying to reach a son lost in the abyss of godhood. We cannot win a war of attrition against an enemy who offers a better life, Minato said. His voice heavy. We fight for the soul of our world, not just its body. We need to show them that a life without struggle, without choice, is not a life at all. Words won't convince a starving man, Tsunade retorted, slamming a sake bottle on the table. We need to hit him hard, find a weakness and exploit it. It was then that Itachi Uchiha spoke, his voice cutting through the tension. He had been silent for most of the meeting, a shadow absorbing the arguments. There is a weakness, he said softly. But it is not one we can exploit with a kunai. All eyes turned to him. At the valley, he felt something, Itachi continued, his Sharingan focused inward, replaying the memory. The Hokage's words, Lady Kushina's chains, they created a paradox in his logic. He is a being of pure order. And he was confronted with a chaotic, illogical emotion that he could not process. His retreat was not a tactical decision, it was a system crash. He stepped forward, his expression set with a resolve that silenced the room. I will go to the citadel. Not to fight, not to assassinate. You'll do what? Jiraiya exclaimed. That's suicide. No, Itachi said, his voice unshakable. It is infiltration. He is curious. He let me live in the valley because my genjutsu was a new form of data. He will grant me an audience for the same reason. I will not fight his power. I will challenge his philosophy. We cannot break his body, so I will attempt to break his certainty. The room was stunned into silence. It was an insane gamble, walking into the lion's den to debate the nature of freedom with the lion. Minato looked at Itachi, seeing not just the Uchiha prodigy, but a man willing to sacrifice himself for an ideal, just as he had been willing to do 16 years ago. He saw a mirror of his own desperation. You will not go alone, Minato said. If he grants you an audience, he will do so publicly. We will have eyes on you. But the risk, Itachi, are you sure? He is offering the world a perfect illusion, Itachi replied, a flicker of his own painful past in his eyes. I know the price of such peace. Someone must make him look at the receipt. In the highest chamber of the citadel, Neryu sat on a simple throne of white stone, his fingers steepled. Before him, a holographic projection of the planet rotated slowly, its vibrant colors now marred by a growing sterile white, the spread of his Concordia field. The memories, no, the data implants from the valley, had been quarantined. He had walled them off in a sealed-off sector of his consciousness. They were an infection, A virus of emotion that threatened the integrity of his mission. Yet, he could feel them, pressing against the walls, whispering a name that was not his. Naruto. Your focus is diluted, Lyra said, her voice sharp. She stood by the window, her silhouette rigid. You spend cycles analyzing the emotional contagion instead of planning the next phase of pacification. The Shinobi Alliance is a wounded animal. A final strike would end their defiance. A wounded animal is most dangerous when cornered, Naruto countered, his voice placid. Let them see the world we are building. Let them see the futility of their cause. Their will must break on its own. If I break it for them, the lesson is lost. The lesson is order, Naruto. The method is irrelevant, she shot back, turning to face him. Her lavender eyes, usually so calm, held a frustration that bordered on fury. These feelings, this hesitation, this is what Ashiki warned us about. The sickness of mortality is contagious. You were contaminated. I am processing new data, he said, his tone a clear dismissal. You are making excuses. Her voice rose, an unprecedented breach of their cold etiquette. They are your biological progenitors. A meaningless coincidence of genetics. You are Otsutsuki, raised in the purity of our truth, for our purpose. These people, they are specimens. The fact that their DNA contributed to your vessel is an irrelevant, sentimental detail. Before Naruto could respond, a soft chime alerted him to a visitor. A lone shinobi, approaching the citadel not with aggression, but with a formal request for parley. Broadcast on an open channel. Naruto brought up the image. Itachi Uchiha, the genjutsu artist, the one who had stood against him in the Valley of Traps. A slow smile touched Naruto's lips. Interesting. The pathogen seeks out the physician. It's a trick, Lyra hissed. Kill him before he reaches the gates. No, Naruto said, rising from his throne. He is not a warrior. He is a philosopher with a sword. He does not come to fight me. He comes to understand me. Or to change me. He looked at Lyra, a challenge in his eyes. You say I am wavering. Let us put it to the test. Let the logic of the Uchiha clash with the logic of the Otsutsuki. Truth will prevail. He gestured, and the citadel's outer defenses lowered, granting Itachi passage. Bring him to the grand audience chamber. Let the people of this land, and the spies of the shinobi world, bear witness. The grand audience chamber was a cavernous amphitheater of white stone, open to the sky where the clouds had been permanently parted. Thousands of citizens from the land of serenity filled the seats, their faces calm and attentive. Hidden among them, disguised with transformation jutsu, were dozens of shinobi, including Kakashi and a team of Anbu, all feeding information back to Konoha. Itachi walked to the center of the chamber, his steps even and confident. He wore the simple Uchiha robes, the fan symbol stark on his back. He was one man against a world. Naruto descended from above on a floating platform, settling on a dais opposite Itachi. The air crackled with a silent, ideological tension. Uchiha Itachi, Naruto's voice resonated through the chamber. You have come to my sanctuary. To what do I owe the pleasure of the company of a man who would trap a god? I have come to understand the nature of the cage you offer. Itachi replied, his voice equally clear and calm. You offer peace. You offer prosperity. A world without pain. It is a tempting offer. It is not an offer. It is a gift, Naruto corrected. A gift your species has proven incapable of giving itself. I have watched your history. It is a river of blood, punctuated by brief, unstable moments of peace before the next conflict inevitably erupts. I am ending the cycle. You are not ending it. You are freezing it, Itachi countered. He gestured to the placid crowd. You have taken their pain, but you have also taken their fire. A man who cannot feel sorrow cannot truly feel joy. A world without struggle is a world without growth. The connections shinobi make, the will to protect a comrade, the very fire that burns in our hearts, it is all forged in the crucible of conflict and choice. You are creating a world of beautiful, empty dolls. Naruto tilted his head, a flicker of genuine curiosity in his Rinnegan. And your alternative, what is the fire you speak of? I have analyzed it. It is the justification for nationalism, for vengeance, for the slaughter of children in the name of a village. Your will of fire burned the Uchiha clan to ash. Did it not? Your growth is a euphemism for the advancement of killing techniques. You do not grow, you merely escalate your methods of self-destruction. The words hit Itachi like a physical blow. He had not expected Naruto to have such specific knowledge. The crowd murmured, their placid faces showing faint hints of confusion. The history of my clan is a tragedy, Itachi admitted, his voice tight. A tragedy born of the very hatred you claim to be erasing. But the solution to a flawed world is not to erase the world's will. It is to guide it. To take on the burdens of that hatred in secret. To bear the pain so that others might have a chance to choose a better path. Peace must be chosen, freely, to have any meaning. A coerced peace is merely tyranny in a gilded cage. Choice is the flaw. Naruto's voice boomed, a hint of Lyra's own frustration seeping in. Given the choice between peace and conflict, your species has chosen conflict time and time again. You choose to honor dead ancestors with fresh blood. You choose to hoard resources and let others starve. You choose to teach your children to hate the children of your neighbors. Your will is a disease. My tyranny is the cure. These people, he swept a hand towards the audience, are no longer afraid. They do not hunger. Their children will never have to learn what a kunai is for. What is the value of your meaningful peace if the price is a mountain of corpses every generation? The debate raged, a battle of philosophies played out on a divine stage. But even as he argued, even as his logic dismantled Itachi's every point, Naruto felt the press of the quarantine data. He saw a flash of red hair, heard a name whispered on the wind. Naruto. He felt a pull, a strange, faint signal from across the world. A gentle pulse of chakra, not aggressive but empathetic. It was a feeling he had never encountered before. It felt like quiet understanding. In Konoha, within the Hyuga compound, Hinata knelt in a darkened dojo. Her Byakugan was active, the veins around her eyes bulging with the strain. She wasn't trying to spy. She wasn't trying to fight. Guided by a strange instinct she didn't understand. She had been focusing her vision not on the citadel, but on the being himself. Her eyes, which saw the flow of chakra, perceived something no one else could. She saw the brilliant, overwhelming white of Naruto's Otsutsuki power. But beneath it, trapped and flickering like a candle flame in a hurricane, she saw a second signature. A warm, chaotic, vibrant orange. The chakra of Naruto Uzumaki. It was battered, suppressed. But it was there. And she saw the black walls he had erected around the memories of his parents, the emotional virus he was trying to contain. Driven by an impulse of pure empathy, she focused all of her will, not to attack, but to connect. She pushed a sliver of her own gentle chakra forward, not with words, but with feelings. She sent him the image of children laughing at the academy playground. The taste of Ichiraku ramen. The quiet sorrow of standing at the memorial stone. The warmth of the sun on your face after a long mission. She sent him the feeling of a world worth choosing to protect. Not a world to be fixed. Back in the chamber, Naruto faltered for a fraction of a second. The unexpected empathetic pulse bypassed his mental defenses, not with force, but by being so non-threatening that his systems didn't register it as an attack. It touched the quarantine walls, and for a moment, the feelings within, the love, the loss, resonated with the feelings she sent. Itachi saw the flicker in his eyes. The momentary disruption. You see, he pressed, his voice low and intense. Even you. A part of you understands. A part of you feels, and you are terrified of it. Before Naruto could recover, an alarm blared through the citadel, a high-pitched shriek of cosmic terror. The holographic planet in his main chamber turned a violent, blood red. A Shiki's voice, transmitted from a deep, hidden sanctuary, echoed only in Naruto's and Lyra's minds. It was thin, panicked. Naruto. They are here. The main branch. An arbiter comes. Kagami Otsutsuki. He has breached our detection network. He is coming to reclaim the harvest. Flee. The planet is lost. Naruto's head snapped up, his eyes wide, looking not at Itachi, but at the sky. The people in the amphitheater gasped, pointing upward. The pale, watery sun was being eclipsed. Not by a moon, but by a wound. A jagged, crimson tear in the fabric of reality was ripping itself open, bleeding a malevolent energy that made the Concordia field feel like a child's lullaby. Naruto's debate with Itachi, his entire Utopia project, his inner turmoil, it all became instantly, terrifyingly irrelevant. The doctor had been so focused on curing the patient's fever that he hadn't noticed the hungry god standing at the door, ready to devour them both. Blank, blank. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.